Good evening, and welcome to another in Metrolinx's series of online open houses for the Ontario line. My name is Joseph Thornley. I'm the CEO of 76 Engage, Metrolinx's public engagement partner for virtual consultation, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. One important note. We have closed captioning available, and if you need closed captioning, you can turn it on by simply scrolling down to the bottom or looking at the bottom of the video that you're watching, and there is a CC icon. You can click on that to turn on closed captioning. As we begin this evening's meeting, we should take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers and immigrants in this generation or generations past. Metrolinx declares its commitment to building meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the historic and continued impacts of colonization and the need to work towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on lands covered by 20 territories, and that we have a responsibility to recognize and value the rights of Indigenous nations and peoples, and conduct business in a manner that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Also, as we start this evening, just a little bit of attention to safety. Safety is important to Metrolinx, and it's a special time of year with many celebrations fast approaching. We're all excited to see our friends and family, but please, as we go into this season, take some time to think about the safety measures and precautions that you can take to ensure that everyone you are having your time with is safe. So this evening, Metrolinx is going to begin the session by providing an overview of the work that has taken place along the Ontario line this year, and they will then give you an update on what's ahead. Following the presentation, we'll take as many questions as possible. As you'll see, just below the video is a question and answer session, question and answer module. Many of you have submitted questions already and upvoted those questions. Take a minute now if you haven't yet looked at them, and you can cast your vote to upvote things or add your own question. I'll start the question and answer session by posing a selection of the pre-submitted questions. I've tried to draw the most voted for and to also cover major topic areas. We'll also have a call-in option after the written questions. Right below the video, you'll see a button that says Join Zoom. For people who want to ask their question verbally, you can click on that, and Daryl and Siva will be there in the Zoom room to be your moderators. And at the appropriate time, they'll let you know that you can turn on your microphone to ask a question. If you are in the Zoom room, we'd ask that you please be brief and to the point with your question. The briefer that each questioner is, the more people who will be able to be heard this evening. Again, if you've just joined us, the event is closed captioned. Just click on the CC icon at the bottom of the video. Now, with us tonight, we have a panel of Metrolinx people who have been doing this for quite some time, and it's good to have them back tonight. Richard Tucker is the Vice President, Subway Project Delivery for the Ontario line. Malcolm Mackay is the program sponsor for the Ontario line. With them is James Francis. He's manager on Metrolinx's environmental programs and assessment team. Natasha Jalal is a senior manager on the property acquisition team, and Franca De Giovanni is a director of community relations for the Toronto Regional Capital Projects. Welcome, Richard, Malcolm, James, and Natasha. And just before we start, I just want to take a second to recognize the elected officials or their representatives who've indicated that they're in attendance today, and that includes MPP Wynne, MP DeBruzen, and MPP Glover. Welcome to you. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I do appreciate that. Tonight, we're taking you on a 15.6 kilometer tour of the Ontario line. We're going to be starting at the West End at Exhibition Station and running all the way up to the Ontario Science Centre. The program is broken up into 4 discrete segments: the West, the Downtown, East, and the North. Next slide. First, we're going to handle the West segment, which is Exhibition to Queen Station. This is where we have King Bathurst Station, Queen Spadina Station, and Exhibition Station. Next slide. At Exhibition, it's the terminal station for the Ontario line and is a very important interchange station with the GO Transit network, where this station serves Exhibition Place, Ontario Place, and Liberty Village and the South Parkdale area. There's over 12,100 boardings and alightings expected here, and a significant number of transfers from the Lakeshore West GO. Next slide. The Exhibition Station is actually north of the Gardiner Expressway and links quite well to Liberty Village. It also provides a good bypass to be able to get across the railway corridor lands to be able to get access to Exhibition Place and the waterfront. Next slide. We're going to talk about construction, and I'll pass it over to Richard Tucker.
Thanks, Malcolm. Great to see you all here this evening. What are we doing as part of that's going to be starting basically in December of this year is early works at the GO Exhibition Station. And the early works are really getting the GO station prepared for the construction of the Ontario line that will be starting later on in 22 and 23. So what are we doing as part of the early works that you'll be seeing? So here's the North Head House that's currently out of service. We'll be recommissioning that and bringing that back into service, which includes an elevator for enhanced accessibility. This accesses the tunnel that goes underneath the GO tracks to the south platform from south to north. We will also be extending this tunnel northwards towards that brick building you see in the background there, and that to provide further access onto Atlantic Avenue. Also, as part of that, we'll be moving 2 of the GO tracks to the north in preparation for the construction of a 3rd platform in the middle of the GO trains, which will allow stopping for both the express and local trains at this location. Finally, we're adding a pedestrian bridge, a temporary pedestrian bridge, to provide some relief as the crowds return to Exhibition Place and to the CNE and all the events that we have down at Exhibition Place and Ontario Place. So all that work together will be occurring over the next couple of years. There will also be some utility relocations that will be taking place. Next slide, please. So you can kind of see the result of this early works if kind of looking at this in late 23, early 24. And you can see we're looking from the west towards the east. You'll see on the right-hand side the Gardiner Expressway. And on the north side, we have Liberty Village. And in the middle there, you see the GO train where the tracks have been spread apart in preparation for that center platform. And you'll see the new head house further to the north. And you'll see that pedestrian bridge that heads across, provide access during peak events from north to south. Just want to emphasize for accessibility, there are elevators in the head houses to allow full access with any mobility challenges from south to north across the corridor. Next slide, and I think it's back to Malcolm.
Yep. Thank you very much, Richard. So from Exhibition, which is an at-grade station, we enter a portal and we go underground to King Bathurst Station. At King Bathurst Station, we're going to be serving the Fort York, as well as the Fashion District. There's over 27,000 residents in this area and 24,000 jobs. The ridership at King Station is around 5,100 boardings and alightings, with good transfers to the 504 King streetcar as well as the 511 Bathurst streetcar. Next slide. Our entrances at King and Bathurst are on the northeast and southeast corners of King and Bathurst Street. That's where we're going to be doing excavations in order to get down to platform level, and then we'll be mining this site in order to minimize the construction impacts of this very large construction project. Next slide. From King and Bathurst, we continue underground to the corner of Queen and Spadina. At Queen and Spadina, we're serving Kensington, Alexandria Park, Wellington Place, and Chinatown. There's an estimated 7,200 boardings and alightings here with transfers, a significant number of transfers from those surface streetcar networks. There's over 2,200 residents and 4,100 jobs, all within a comfortable 10-minute walk of this very important station. Next slide. Our entrances here are on the southwest corner and northeast corner of Queen and Spadina. And what's very important here, again, as we're doing down at King and Bathurst, is we're going to be mining straight down at those entrance locations and going to be mining this station from each direction in order to, once again, not impact the streetcar network and the streetscape. Next slide. So for the west segment, what can we expect? Well, construction, as Richard described at exhibition, is going to start by the end of this year. We'll be reporting the future traffic impacts and construction as we bring our project company, which would be the successful proponent for the South Civils part of the work. We'll be working up the traffic management plans and sharing those. The preparatory utility relocations will begin early in 2022, with construction at the King Bathurst and Queen Spadina station in late 2022 and 2023. Both of these sites, as well as exhibition, are sites that have transit-oriented community opportunities. And that program is being delivered by Infrastructure Ontario. And if you'd like to know about the transit-oriented community program, go to the engageio.ca site to learn more. Next slide. So now we're moving to what we call the downtown segment, which goes from Osgoode all the way down to the lower Don Bridges. Next slide. So this area includes Osgoode Station, Queen Station, Moss Park Station, Corktown Station, and the Don Yard and the Don Bridges. Next slide. Osgoode Station is where the existing Line 1 station is. We're actually building the Ontario line below the existing Line 1 station, directly below the Osgoode Station, so that it has very good transfer. And you can see from the ridership, with over 12,000 people boarding and alighting and almost 6,000 transfers from the existing Line 1 in the peak hour in the morning. Osgoode Station also serves the entertainment district, the financial district, and Kensington, Chinatown, and Grange Park. Next slide. Our entrances here, we have two entrances. One on the northeast corner of University and Queen in the corner of Osgoode Hall, as well as the corner of Simcoe and Queen on the south side, where there's a secondary entrance. What's very important for us here is recognizing the historical context of Osgoode Hall. We've developed a station that is going to be behind the historic fences and will fit very well into the area and minimize the impact to the historic nature of Osgoode Hall. Next slide. Now we continue east to Queen Station. Queen Station's our busiest station on the Ontario line in the morning, with over 16,000 people boarding and alighting and over 6,000 transfers between Line 1. This is the location that best serves the financial district and the downtown Yonge area. with 18,000 residents and over 150,000 jobs within the 10-minute watershed of Queen and Yonge Station. We're taking great care in delivering this station. This is one of our hardest stations because we are, once again, under the existing Line 1. Next slide. We have entrances on each corner of Yonge and Queen Street, and we're utilizing some of the existing entrances that TTC uses today. Next slide. And you can see that our station is very deep underneath the existing Line 1 and very complicated construction. By building directly below the existing Line 1, we create the shortest transfer between Line 1 and the Ontario line, which is very important to make it a very attractive alternative to the car and a very attractive alternative to going through the very busy Yonge Bloor station. We spent a lot of time working with the city and the Transportation Services Group to develop a implementation plan to manage traffic here. I'm going to pass it over to Richard on the next slide to talk about the construction of Queen Station.
Thanks, Malcolm. So Queens, maybe if you could go back one slide, but looking at Queen Station, essentially the way we've planned to do it is there, as you saw from our earlier slides, there's a little bit of a closure between Bay and Yonge Street, and then another closure between Yonge and Victoria. And those are basically two vertical shafts to access the construction of the station underneath the Line 1. So if you're looking at this diagram, you kind of see those orange and blue shafts that head down either side, and those are from the surface at those two locations. And then at the bottom and underneath that white block, and that white block is really the bedrock, we will then mine a cavern horizontally back and forth, as you see on this diagram, the actual station cavern underneath Line 1. And so those two accesses, it's so important to gain those accesses from the surface east and west of Yonge Street, and essentially allow us to create this cavern underneath without disrupting Yonge Street or Victoria or Bay Street. So it's a good solution. Obviously, there's a lot of high-rise, massive buildings at that corner, and this is really the only way we can get at the station. And the full closure of Queen Street is designed to really reduce the amount of time that this construction occurs here, rather than stretching it out over a year longer if we did some sort of partial closure or with letting some cars through or whatever. And there would still need to be some full closures even if we did some sort of partial closure. There would be periods where the whole thing would have to be closed to allow the creation of those partial areas. So it's an extra year or so of construction in this area if we did partial, and it would take another 6 months or so for the Ontario line to open, just because of the additional duration of construction here. And this is one of the critical path stations, one of the most important stations on the line, both from a construction viewpoint as well as from a passenger transfer viewpoint. So with that, back to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Richard. Next slide. So during the closure, the Queen streetcar will be diverted along Richmond and Adelaide Street. We're going to be working with TTC in the city to reinstate the Adelaide streetcar route. And you can see that as a result of this closure of Queen Street, that we are able to accelerate the delivery. We've done an extensive modeling exercise with the Transportation Services Group and TTC to develop a solution here to deliver the project as quickly and efficiently as possible and still manage the traffic through the city. Work is expected to begin here in 2023 and take about 4.5 years. Also during this construction period, Victoria Street, Yonge Street, and Bay Street will remain open. So the north-south ability to get through this construction site will still be maintained. Next slide. So what to expect next at Queen Station? Well, there will be continued consultations with the city, TTC, and the community. In December of this year, a report is coming from Transportation Services about the road closures associated with the downtown area. And the demolition of Hudson's Bay basement will begin in July 2022. And through the winter of 2022, we'll be working on the hydro, gas, and utility relocations in the area. By 2023, we'll be ready for the large construction that will be undertaken by our project company when it arrives on site. Next slide. So now we continue underground towards Moss Park. Here we're building the station in the south side of Moss Park, just north of Queen Street. The ridership here is around 7,300 in its peak morning hour of boardings and alightings. This station also serves the St. Lawrence Market, the Garden District, and Regent Park. Very large number of residents, 2,300, 600, and over 2,300 jobs are available within the comfortable 10-minute walk of this station. We're also working quite closely with the city on the coordination of the Moss Park revitalization project so that all these projects can be delivered in the same time frame and not affect each other's schedule. Next slide. So this is a rendering of the layout for the station. You can see that the underground tunnel is north of Queen Street to be able to allow Queen Street to remain open and carry traffic as well as streetcars. And then our future station entrance is on the corner of the northwest corner of Sherbourne and Queen Street. Next slide. Now we turn south and we head towards Corktown Station. Here we're serving the Distillery District, St. Lawrence Market, and the West Donlands. There's good ridership in this location, over 4,100 in total of boardings and alightings, with 26,000 residents and 15,000 jobs, all very close within the 10-minute walk. This station also serves the 504 King streetcar transfer in order to provide some relief and resiliency to the surface streetcar network. Next slide. So our station is on the corner of Berkeley and King Street, and it is going to be occupying this site. We have a site that's a little further south here, and this site is going to be used for construction. This is a large launch site, a potential launch site for the tunnel boring machines, which will go from here to downtown, and we'll also stage from here to be able to mine towards the Don Yard. We're going to talk about construction now, and I'm going to pass it over to Richard on the next slide.
Thanks, Malcolm. So early construction at Corktown. So currently, I'm for those who may be in the area of Corktown, I'm sure you've seen our crews out on site. They're currently doing archaeology on the site. As we know, this is a very important historical and cultural site, and that work's ongoing. And James will be bringing us up to date on where we're at there. As Malcolm had mentioned, there's two sites here. The northern site between Front and King is the actual location of the station, and currently there's a Staples and a car dealership on that site. Those will be demolished, commencing later towards the end of this year and going through the first part of next year. On the south site, this is the staging area for the tunnel boring machines and for the SEM methodology that will head north and south from the site along the guideway alignment, the tunnel alignment. And there's a few buildings on here. There's a lot of parking and a few buildings which will be demolished. There's a car wash and some other buildings on here that will be demolished. And as part of that demolition work, we are also working hand in hand with archaeology to allow us to assess these sites and make sure that they're protected and preserved and documented as we move the work forward. And with that, I'd hand it over to James to bring us up to date on all the exciting developments there.
That's great. Thanks very much, Richard. And next slide, please. So I'm very pleased to report that our archaeological investigations at the First Parliament site to date, they've resulted in some interesting finds. So this site, it's located in a part of the city that's known to have been used by Indigenous peoples prior to colonial settlement. and it was also the home of Upper Canada's first and second Parliament buildings. Following that, it was the home of the Home District Jail, and then following that, it was the home of consumers' gas facilities. All of that prior to modern day automotive related uses. So far, our archaeological investigations on the site, they've uncovered remains associated with early Toronto, including railway tracks and a railway turntable that would have been used by locomotives accessing the site. So the images on this slide, they show our archaeological crews at work as they're working to uncover the railway turntable. So our archaeological work will continue this fall until the ground freezes and pick up again in the spring. We have Indigenous monitors on site. They're observing and advising as we complete this important work. And as the work advances, we're very much looking forward to sharing our findings with the community and also exploring commemorative opportunities about the resources that are on the site. And so, I'd like to encourage anyone who is interested in the history of the site to participate in our survey about heritage interpretation and commemoration plans for the site. In this survey, we're collecting feedback on which heritage themes that are associated with the site should be interpreted and commemorated as part of our future Ontario Line Station. This work, it's based on some excellent work advanced by the city in their heritage interpretation strategy for the site. And for those who are interested to know more, we have a short video on our website going into some detail on this. And that video introduces the heritage themes that we're considering for commemoration. The survey is live until December 17th, and again, I very much encourage completion of the survey. So thanks very much, and back to you, Richard.
Thanks, James. That's really exciting. I love this part of the work. Next, looking at the next part of the alignment as we move further to the south and to the east, we come to the Don River and the Don Valley Parkway, obviously a very important part of the city of Toronto and the fabric of the city. As you see here, we have a view up in looking to the south from the Don Valley Parkway. We have the Don River on the right, and on the left you'll see the soap factory that's planned for redevelopment as part of the East Harbor development that Malcolm will talk about in a second. This bridge itself here is going to be a great architectural gateway to the city. It is a what they call a tide arch bridge for obvious reasons, and it's a clear span of about 108 meters, which is a significant distance, well over 300 feet. And the reason it clear spans is to make sure that there's no interruption, no effect on the Don River itself, the floodplain in this area, or on the Don Valley Parkway. This is the way that the Ontario line enters the Metrolinx's Don Yard area, where we have as most people who ride the GO see when they're leaving Union Station towards the east, you'll see the storage tracks on the south side, and you see a large number of points or switches where the trains align themselves for the right platform at Union Station. So the work here is we've issued RFQs. We do have some working towards selecting the short list of bidders for our construction tender, which is scheduled to go out later at the end of this year or early next year. And we're looking towards a construction start in this area on the bridge abutments and some utility relocations in the summer of next year. Next slide, please. So going back a little further to the east, so between Corktown and the Don River Bridge that we just looked at is the what we call the Don Yard. And essentially it's this location that the Ontario line, as it comes from the east, starts to head underground before it and go into tunnel before it makes its turn north up to the Corktown station. This is a portal, what we call a portal as a transition, and it's located actually within Metrolinx's property in the Don Yard. And to make room for it, we have a plan to actually kind of move the tracks apart a little bit so that the Lakeshore main line which goes through and heads through East Harbor and on further eastwards. They will be moved slightly to the south along with all their switches and signals and everything else. And the Richmond Hill line, which you can see there curving up to the north, will be moved slightly to the north, and that will provide a gap for us to put the porthole for the Ontario line in there and allow us to descend underground. The advantage of this location is that we've worked out a methodology where we will be able to access this work site entirely from the north side of the corridor, and allow a lot of that complex work to occur within what is currently rail corridor lands. So it's very exciting in that way. And with that, I'll let Malcolm bring us further east and into East Harbour.
Yes, thank you very much, Richard. So what's next for the downtown segment? Well, as James said, the First Parliament Heritage Interpretation Commemoration Plan themes, our survey has been issued, and that's going to be open until December. And it's at metrolinxengage.com/Ontario line. The construction at Corktown will begin in 2022 after the archaeological investigation that James described is complete. The early works for the Queen streetcar will commence in 2022, and then we'll come out with the award of our contract to the project company. We'll develop the traffic management plans for the future construction. We'll be communicating those through our electronic media, as well as our, by that time, hopefully in-person meetings. We'll continue to refine the property requirements, and owners will be notified. And as you're very well aware, at Corktown Station, there's a transit-oriented community opportunity, and that is being delivered by Infrastructure Ontario. Once again, engageio.ca if you're interested in learning more about the transit-oriented community in this area. Next slide. So now we're going to continue east. We're going to go across the Don River and Richard's beautiful bridge to East Harbour. At East Harbour, and we go from East Harbour through Riverside all the way up to Gerrard. This is the area that we call the joint corridor. This is where we're going to be running in the lands that Metrolinx currently owns and operates GO trains. Next slide. At East Harbour, there's a large development happening there, and this is also a very important station because it's an interchange with the GO Transit network. There's going to be over 50,000 jobs here and more than 5,000 residents within a comfortable walk. This is a very busy station with the transfers. We're expecting up to almost 15,000 during its busiest hour. Next slide. And I'll pass this to Richard to talk about the early construction works at East Harbour Station. Richard?
Thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, so this is the beautiful East Harbour Station. It will become one of the most significant stations in Toronto area. As Malcolm mentioned, it's a very busy interchange with GO Transit and a very important area for new development in the city. The early works that'll be happening in this area is the first thing we have to do to build the station is we have to move the current GO tracks to the north and allow us to build the south part of the station underneath, because the station here, as you can see, it is actually underneath the tracks, similar to kind of Union Station. So essentially, the first thing we do is we're going to be building an embankment starting early next year. And the current GO tracks will be slid slightly to the north to run across that embankment and allow room for construction of the station to start on the south side. And then as whenever that south side is finished, we think is going to be in the kind of 23, 24 time period, that the tracks will be moved to the south, and then the north part of the station will be constructed along with the Ontario Line station. And that's the outline of the work in this area. There will also be some demolition of some buildings in this area along Eastern Avenue to facilitate the construction of the embankment and the replacement of the Eastern Avenue Bridge. So with that, I think it's back to Malcolm.
Thank you, Richard. Next slide. So now we continue north and east. We head to the Riverside Leslieville station. Here, this is a very important interchange station with the 501 streetcar on the east end of the alignment. There's over 9,500 residents and 6,900 jobs within the comfortable 10-minute walk. This station is being built across Queen Street with entrances on the north side and the south side of Queen Street. Next slide. So as we're building this, you can see that the Ontario line is to the left side of this diagram. You can see that we're well off Jimmy Simpson Park. We've built retaining walls here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it to Richard to talk about the construction of those retaining walls and noise walls. Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, this is a really interesting part of the network where we're running parallel with the GO system on Metrolinx's existing property. We've done a lot of work, our construction teams, in trying to figure out a way to build this in a way that comes from inside the corridor. We've heard the concerns about trying to access the corridor from parks or anything, and that is completely not the case. We've worked very hard to ensure that access is only from main streets, so Queen and Dundas, Logan. And the actual staging area is the logistics base is actually up at Dickens Avenue on a vacant parking lot there. So we will be working in terms of these walls. They're actually called T-walls. So if you can imagine a T, but lying down on its side, and the front faces is a retaining wall, and the back part is what supports it. The advantage of T-walls or precast T-walls is that we can actually build them entirely from within the corridor. So we don't need to access any of the lands outside, which would be the case with a traditional kind of cast in place type wall where you'd have to put formwork and all that kind of stuff. So this is really exciting. On top of those, we'll have the sound control walls or noise barriers that can be either solid or they can be clear or a combination thereof. And I think there's some consultation going on about that as to what's preferred and where. Essentially, the other things we'll be doing with the corridor is replacing the current bridges as I said, on Eastern, Queen, Dundas, and Logan. So those bridges, which are quite dated, will be replaced and actually be raised a little bit. So the experience in terms of walking through them will be much improved for the neighborhood and be a much nicer linkage between the two sides of the corridor. And with that, I think it's back to you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Richard. Next slide. So what we heard from the community was a very strong sense about the pride that they have in the green space in the parks. And what we've done with the planning for this project is we've been able to actually increase the park sizes. McCleary Playground, we're increasing by almost 300 square meters. Jimmy Simpson Park is increasing by 700 square meters. Bruce Mackey Park by 1,100 square meters, and the Gerard Carlaw Parkette by 500 square meters. So for a total of 2,600 additional square meters of park space being provided because of the building of the Ontario line and the relocation of the property lines. What's also important here is that there is a closure of the Gerard Carlaw Parkette and the dog park there, but we're working quite closely with the city and Toronto Parks and Forestry and Recreation to identify an alternative temporary site, which may become a permanent site. But eventually the Gerard Carlaw Parkette, when we're done, will be reinstated in a way where we've got community consultation and input from the elected officials and the City of Toronto on what they would like to see here. Next slide. Now we continue north to the corner of Gerard and Carlaw, where we have our Gerard station with its easy connection to the 506 streetcar and the very busy 72-8 bus. There's 11,300 residents and 3,800 jobs within the 10-minute walk shed, and we're expecting ridership here of over 3,300 during the busiest hour. Next slide. Along the corridor, we're going to be building noise walls and noise barriers. Currently, the joint corridor is unprotected, and what we've done is we've created a sound lab where you can actually listen to the vehicles passing as well as the current noise levels. You can visit our website at ontario-linesoundstudio.ca/listen to experience the sound demos. It's really quite interesting work, and we've just added Jimmy Simpson and Tiverton Parkette to the library of noises, future noise barriers. And what we would appreciate is your feedback on this. Go there, listen to it, and let us know what you think. Next slide. So what's next for the East segment? Well, the final early works reports were published and are available on our website. The survey results for the new noise wall and retaining walls has closed and will be published by the end of the year. And we'll use that community engagement to engage you further and develop the very best designs and outcomes we can for the retaining walls and noise walls and how they interface with the parks through this area. Vegetation removals for the GO expansion are underway north towards Pape Station. The Ontario line will begin in early 2022 with the joint corridor construction beginning also in late 2022. We're still refining the property requirements through the East segment, and owners will be notified as those are finalized. And very importantly, the environmental impact assessment report for the entire project will be posted for draft in early 2022. We're expecting in January 2022 for that to come out. Next slide. So now we're heading into the last segment, the north segment of the Ontario line. Next slide. This runs from Pape Station through Cosburn Station up into Thorncliffe Park, Flemington Park Station, and the Ontario Science Centre. Is a very important area for us. The Pape Station is a vital station for the relief to Line 1. We have to make sure that the transfer at Pape Station is attractive and that people are willing to get out of their seats on the Line 2 and get off to get on the Ontario line, rather than traveling through the very busy Young Bloor station. We're expecting with our modeling results that almost a 25% reduction of ridership through Young Bloor will be attained as a result of the Ontario line, which is a significant relief to a very busy station. Next slide. So the north section, north of Gerrard, is a tunneled underground section that will run up to Minton Place. At Minton Place, next slide. At Pape Station, it's as I described, the very important interchange station with Line 2. There's over 12,000 people within walking distance of the station. And we've actually designed the station so that when we're building it, it is one of the most challenging stations because we're under the existing Line 2, but we're going to be able to maintain Line 2 operations and keep the Pape Station, existing Pape Station, open during the construction period. Next slide. So as we emerge at Minton Place, we are going to be building the Minton Place portal, which you can see here, and crossing the Don Valley. We've had a significant outreach with the community through the Pape Avenue Concerned Citizens for Transit group, who have been very active with us in developing the solutions here and providing us very constructive feedback on the implementation plans for this very large part of the construction project in this community. Next slide. As we come across the Don Valley, we will be entering Thorncliffe Park on an elevated guideway, which are very common in Vancouver and various other cities around the world. Here we're also building the maintenance and storage facility, which is the result of a significant site selection process. And then we will continue from that all the way up to Science Centre Station, going through Flemington Park Station, hitting two very important communities that are currently underserved by transit. Next slide. So the elevated tracks will be separate from vehicles and pedestrians. You can see from this slide that there's an opportunity here to create a vibrant animated space. And we'll be seeking community input on these design priorities and the options that are available here. This is very important for us because this will help create a Main Street environment along Overlea Boulevard. Next slide. So during our site selection process for the maintenance and storage facility, we undertook a complete evaluation end-to-end on the alignment. We identified 9 candidate sites, and we measured them against whether they were zoned for industrial use, how close they were to the main line, whether they were large enough, whether there were employment issues with respect to the impact to employment. We wanted to avoid residential developments and residences and avoid the ecological areas as much as possible. We put those all together and we evaluated, and we came up with a hybrid solution, which includes part of the maintenance and storage facility being in the Wicksteed industrial area, and the other part of it being on the north side of the Overley Thorncliffe Park area. Next slide. So what's up next for the north segment? Well, we're going to continue developing the reference concept designs for the alignment, bridges, and guideways. That's the last part of the contracts that we're going to be tendering. As we are better defining the north segment, we're going to be advancing our community outreach and sharing information as it becomes available to us. The survey results for our design of walls, fencing, and landscaping is going to be published by the end of the year. And the community office at the East York Town Centre will open in 2022. Now I'd like to talk about community outreach and pass it over to Franca.
Thanks very much, Malcolm. So 2021 was a very busy year for the community engagement team, and we've had, of course, to pivot virtually and having several of these virtual open houses through April, June, September, October, and now this is our end of year. Of course, the series will begin again in the new year. We have had a good live attendance, as well as several people who watch the meetings afterwards and who submit questions. So we've been answering them there. I think several times this evening we've referenced a few of the surveys and the survey work that will be published by the end of the year, and that's been really great to get good participation numbers there, hundreds of comments coming in. And we have been able to, through the summer period, especially as things have opened up in our province, been able to do more outreach in person, in pop-ups, and through community engagement along the line. And we've got the community office at 770 Queen opened. And as Malcolm and others have referenced this evening, we're also going to be opening an office in Thorncliffe. So this is a very large project and a very long process. We thank everybody who is participating and who also belong to resident associations and other community groups along the line who have invited Metrolinx to participate in your own meetings. Please, we would encourage you to continue to do that. In 2022, we'll start to get into community liaison committees and construction liaison committees as the early works program gets underway, and we'll be having those regular dialogues. Thanks so much. I think we're over to you, Joseph, for questions.
Okay, thank you, Franca, and thank you to the team. That was a lot of information. We're about 40 minutes in, and that leaves us about 40 minutes, I guess 50 minutes in. That leaves us about 40 minutes for questions. So let me try and cover a lot of ground from the written questions. First off, we ended up with the maintenance and storage facility. Let's go directly there. One of the questioners indicates that given that you are imposing the maintenance yard and refusing to put the alignment either on Bannigan or underground to completely avoid residential homes on Overley Boulevard, what real concessions are you giving to the Thorncliffe community, given that it's bearing the worst consequences of this Ontario line?
Well, Joseph, I can start the answer on this, and then I'll toss it to Franca for some discussion about community engagement. But one of the things that we did during the course of the siting evaluation was we did a very thorough job of looking at all the impacts associated with the maintenance and storage facility and measured those. And what we found was that the site that we chose, which is the Thorncliffe Park and the Wicksteed Industrial Park location, as well as using the hydro corridor lands, gave us the opportunity to maintain as many jobs as possible. We're working quite closely with all of the businesses that are affected as a result of the maintenance and storage facility, and relocating them in the community if that's their desire, relocating them elsewhere if that's their goal and ambition, and making sure that the very important community services that are available in this area are maintained. So we're going at great lengths to make sure that the community is kept whole in that regard. As for the implementation of the project, we're working quite closely with our colleagues at our engineering companies to come up with the very best solutions for the elevated guideway. We know that we've specifically moved the elevated guideway from the center of Overlea to the north side of Overlea to be able to get further away from the residences. So we've made those changes because we know it's a better outcome. And it also allows us to put the station in a location on the north side of Overlea that makes it very accessible to all of the businesses that are there, as well as the residences that are both east and west here. We are working, and we have been working with community members and community leaders, and trying to establish what the needs of the community are, and being able to evaluate those to see how transit as an investment in these communities can sponsor and spawn some of the goals and aspirations of the communities. So that is an active discussion. And with that, maybe I should pass it over to Franca to talk about how that community engagement can continue.
Sure. Thanks, Malcolm, and thanks for the question. I think, I touched on it a little bit earlier, and I think I'd like to just acknowledge that there is a recognition that in a few places along the line, and certainly we've heard from Thorncliffe neighborhood that an elevated guideway and the routing of the elevated guideway, why is that here? I think the team really does still believe, because the ridership identifies that we want to be really in the heart of the community. So now, how can we build that in such a way that people will recognize the most benefit from the project? And I think it's taken us several months to sort of get here, and it's going to take us probably a few more years to continue that dialogue and to keep moving forward with understanding how best to integrate this infrastructure project into the community. So there's going to be a lot more dialogue in 2022. It's not going to stop even while the route the preferred route has been selected. The discussion won't stop, and we'll continue to figure out ways to really integrate this infrastructure project into the neighborhood.
Thank you, Franca. Thank you, Malcolm. Let's stay with the MSF for a minute. So it's just north of the Don, and there's a concern about the potential environmental impact. Can you talk about what you are doing to protect the sensitive area and to mitigate any environmental damage?
Well, I can start off, and then I'll pass it to James. So we're working quite closely with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority to be able to evaluate the building that we're planning in the Don Valley. And we crossed the Don Valley twice in order to get from Minton Place to Thorncliffe Park, and then from Thorncliffe Park over to Flemington. So those two crossings are necessary for us to get across those areas. We did look, and just part of our option evaluation, we did look at tunneling, and tunneling below and back up was not something that could be easily accomplished. So we do have these crossings, and they're being fully evaluated as part of our environmental impact assessments report, which James is working on. So I'll pass it to you, James.
Absolutely, thanks. Thanks so much, Malcolm. So yes, as Malcolm mentioned, we're working very, very closely with the Conservation Authority as we're advancing and refining our design. And for any impacts that may be confirmed as our design is advanced, say tree or vegetation removal, we are committed to planting compensation trees, and that's in accordance with our Metrolinx vegetation guideline, and that's to keep the tree canopy whole. And in accordance with our vegetation guideline, we plant more trees than the trees that we remove, and we seek to plant those as early as we can. So that's a principle that we'll be following in this area. And other specific mitigation measures that we're looking at in this area will be detailed in our environmental impact assessment report, which as Malcolm mentioned in the presentation, we're planning to share for public review and comment in early 2022. Impact assessment report will include a detailed natural environment technical report, which will go into detail about our existing condition surveys in the area, any potential impacts that we might have, and then the specific mitigation measures that we're looking to implement. So I'd very much encourage review of this report once it's shared in the coming months, and very much looking forward to any feedback that folks may have on that. So thanks very much, and back to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, James. And at the end, we'll point to the places where the surveys and the input mechanisms are so that everybody can go there and provide input. Again, we want to cover some ground, so let's talk about the above ground alignment and the joint corridor that you were talking about. So we have a few questions. I'm going to put some of the comments together and lead up to a question. And first off, people have said that the joint corridor between the Don Valley and Girard will have more traffic than anywhere else on the line, an increase from 150 trains currently to potentially 1,500 trains per day. The community does not support this uptake of traffic above ground. The noise barrier walls will be about 5 meters high. Would it not be possible to add 1.5 meters to the top of the wall and then build a roof over the track of the joint corridor? Above the GO, this would be a bit higher, 10 meters, an extra 5 meters. But what this would do is it would suppress sound, provide possible park space. And in parks, we could embank it, connect to other rooftops, have hanging foliage. So would you explore this as a means of mitigating the impact of the above ground alignment in the joint corridor?
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, so that's a good question, and we have done a significant amount of outreach and consultation with the community about this. We do understand that there is a part of the community, a big part of that community, that is not in favor of the increased traffic. But what we've done is we've listened to you, and we understand that noise and vibration is an issue, and a primary issue. We also understand that the treescape and the impact to parks is an issue. And what we've done is we've made sure that through the work and design development that we've developed solutions that address those issues so that they really become non-issues. So James is going to talk about noise and vibration in a few moments. And he's going to tell you that the wall heights that we've modeled are 5 meters, but there are areas where we can put 7-meter walls in. We can also make those walls transparent. We can make them opaque. And that's the sort of community involvement and the enterprise that we want to create with yourselves to be able to have the best outcome possible. And what you'll also hear from James is that covering of the corridor is unnecessary. In order to create and mitigate the noise and vibration of the alignment, both as a single pass by, as well as the average of all the vehicles going by versus the existing condition. So actually with that, James, let me toss it to you to talk about the environmental aspects of this, and then throw it back to me.
Absolutely, thanks, Malcolm. So through the joint corridor, we're looking in depth at all the environmental aspects, including noise, as Malcolm mentioned, and we've gone into great detail with our noise modeling, and that's shown also in the immersive sound demonstration that Malcolm was pointing to earlier, which really kind of brings to life what we're anticipating future noise will sound like. in those noise, and it's quieter than today at most locations near the joint corridor. So really, we think we're not only delivering fantastic transit to the neighborhood, but improving the noise condition through the area. And the way we're achieving that, we are achieving that with the noise barriers. It's also starting with the modern quiet electric trains, the continuously welded rail, and the noise barriers through the joint corridor, they're effective at reducing the noise from the Ontario line trains. They'll also be effective at reducing the noise from the GO trains through the area. And just on the topic of GO trains in future, the vast majority of them through this area will also be electrified, and that's reflective in our noise modeling as well. So future condition that we're looking at here is an improvement compared to today in terms of noise, and that's really, I think, as Malcolm said, kind of turning the issue into a non-issue. So Malcolm, back to you.
Okay. Did you have more to add, Malcolm, or can I move on to the next question? I'd like to ask two more before we go to the Zoom room.
Can I just fill in one blank, Joseph? So
yes.
Also with the Ontario line, what we've done is we've made the noise walls continuous along the whole elevated area where we're running the Ontario line, and that way every single house and residence along the way gets that form of protection. We also are replacing the bridges in this area. The bridges were some of them were built as early as 1926. And they too are going to have to be replaced sometime in the future. We're doing all this work now so that one time we're coming in and we're doing the Lakeshore East work. We're doing the Ontario line work. We're also doing the bridge replacements. So this one construction, this one very large project is going to deliver all this all at the same time, rather than spreading it out over time with different things happening at different times and constantly coming into the community. We're doing it once and we're doing it right. So with that, back to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask two more questions from the written list, and then we'll go to the Zoom room. Again, if you've just joined us, you can go to the Zoom room by clicking on the yellow Join Zoom button that's right below the video. I'm hoping that you can keep your answers fairly succinct on these two questions. The second one is again the first one is about the above ground alignment, and it's fairly specific. Our community has presented a health impact assessment examining the environmental and health impact associated with the above ground Ontario line in the Riverside, Leslieville area and comparing it to an alternative underground option. Will Metrolinx consider these findings from our study in the preparation of the Ontario line final design, and how?
So, James, we've received that report and we've passed it on to our environmental group, and you've responded and evaluated it?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd just like to thank the community again for that submission. So very much appreciate the feedback that's provided, and we did go through this submission in detail and provided responses last week. So very much interested in continuing the conversation on those items. Just to speak a little bit to them, we're absolutely looking at all of the environmental factors noted in the submission in our environmental assessment process, and we're identifying the mitigation solutions for each of these factors, including noise and air quality. So as we just spoke about, we're looking at a whole suite of tools to manage noise in the area so that it's even lower than today. And in terms of air quality, in terms of air quality, from an air quality perspective, since the Ontario line trains will be electric and we're anticipating taking cars off the road, we're predicting improvements to local air quality. And in terms of any other potential impacts, we're very much committed to managing those, and details on our proposed solutions for the non-early works portions of the project will be detailed in the environmental impact assessment report, which again will be shared early next year. So details forthcoming about our other management plans. So thanks very much.
And James, you'll be publishing that report. Will people have a chance then to respond to that?
Absolutely, yes. Thanks, Joseph. So we're planning to publish our draft in January of this coming year, followed by a 30-day public review period. So just like our public review periods for the early works reports. Following that, we'll be digesting all the comments we receive, responding to them, updating our report, and then issuing a final that reflects all the feedback that we receive on the draft.
Thank you for that. My last question before we go to Siva and Daryl in the Zoom room is about construction. It's the question, and in particular from people along Pape Avenue. Many of the homes along Pape are over 100 years old, built very close to the road. And I'm concerned, says one person, about the impact of large boring machines, construction vibrations, operational vibrations afterwards, the impact on the structural integrity of the homes. What are your plans to guarantee that this will not negatively impact the buildings in the area? Can you talk a bit about that?
Hi, yeah, it's thanks, Joseph. Richard here. For sure, of course, that is a concern of anybody who'd be in the area of these tunnel boring machines. And the good news is that the tunnel boring machines are quite deep, over 30 meters deep at that location. If to put it in perspective, that's further away from from the front of your house across the street at Pape. It's further than that below you, below your foundation. The second thing is we have, as part of our contractual arrangements and working with the contractors, very strict criteria with respect to vibration and with respect to settlements, which would be the two possible effects on a structure on the surface. We recognize that buildings are older and as a result a little more fragile than perhaps an equivalent modern building. So these criteria are drafted specifically with those kind of buildings in mind. And we do operate a number of real-time monitoring systems in terms of the vibration, and also in terms of settlements, possible settlements that may occur if you know. So we keep an eye on those. There is a very strict range on settlements that's allowed, and that is intended to be well below any effect on the buildings. We also do pre-conduction surveys to make sure that we know the condition of the buildings in advance, and we also do post-construction surveys to take a look at the buildings afterwards and to see if anything has happened during the time of the tunnel boring machine going underneath in the construction. Finally, we have satellite in the space age. We have satellite monitoring of the actual ground movements in the area over a long term. Interestingly enough, that actually we do it over a year in advance, because actually the ground does move up and down with seasonal changes. As the winter comes and as summer comes along, the ground actually moves up and down by itself. So we have to take that into account. That's how sensitive the monitoring is from the satellites in space. So it's very impressive and quite technologically interesting. So we have a multi-layered program for construction to ensure no damage to the buildings. And in terms of the operational side of things, again, there's very strict limits on vibration that the trains generate. These are modern trains with modern track systems, and they're designed to keep vibrations to an absolute minimum. Again, in a tunnel that's over 30 meters below the street. So we really anticipate no issues in terms of vibration or in terms of any settlements for these sensitive buildings along Pape.
And Richard, when is that construction along Pape, the tunneling, going to actually occur?
So basically, we anticipate that construction on the northern segment, so that's what we call North Civils, and which is really the segment from Gerrard up to the science station, is anticipated to occur start construction in the latter half of 2024.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the Zoom room. I understand that Siva and Daryl have several people who put their hands up to ask questions verbally.
Thanks, Joseph. We have a healthy list of folks with questions. In order to get through as many as possible, we will be asking each speaker to keep their question to 30 seconds in order to be respectful to others. With that, Siva?
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Our first person on the list is Shirley. Shirley, you can go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much. I just had a question about the west segment of the line. I noted that the Ontario line skirts the upper border of Fort York National Historic Site between Stratton Avenue and Bathurst. I was wondering if you could say a bit more about the potential impacts on this important National Historic Site in terms of associated work or support infrastructure and that sort of thing.
So I can start. We've been engaged quite closely with Friends of Fort York and the City of Toronto in all the work that we're doing in around the Fort York area. We're very respectful, obviously, of that important national historic element. And Richard, maybe you could just talk about the portal design and the tunneling that's going to be happening through this area and how we're avoiding any impacts to Fort York.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. So the actual Ontario line guideway alignment or the tunnel alignment is actually on the north side of the corridor, and starting from Exhibition Place, where it's on the surface, basically in the vicinity of Atlantic and Jefferson. It runs parallel to the railway corridor on the north side, and then starts to gradually descend into the ground, and is basically below ground by the time it hits Strawn Avenue. And then it starts to turn to the north towards Bathurst and King and heads underneath Ordnance Park and up that direction. So really it's never really that close to Fort York. It is underground essentially before it hits Strawn Avenue. And it's coming out of the ground as it proceeds away from Fort York. So we don't anticipate that there would be any direct effects or any effects on Fort York from that far away. So back to you, Malcolm. Or is that over to Joseph?
Sivahami.
Sivahami. Sorry about that.
You know what's funny? I'm going to now throw to Daryl.
Thanks. Next up, we have David, who has asked us to read his question out loud. He noted that there's large timbers unearthed at the first Parliament site. He is wondering if we have any idea what their origin was.
So, David, that's a great question. It is so exciting, the archaeology work that's happening down there. We actually had the Ministry of Culture and Heritage down there, as well as the City of Toronto and all of the Ontario Heritage Trust. It was just fantastic to bring everybody in, all the archaeologists. So it is an exciting time. There were timbers exposed there. There were cobblestones exposed there. James, you were there too. What else are we doing, and kind of what is our timing going into the winter, and what do we do?
Great. Yeah, and in terms of finds, we've also found some flagstones and a possible cut stone foundation. In terms of those timbers in particular, we believe that those were sleepers or ties supporting the railway spur and the railway roundhouse on the site. So part of that kind of early industrial layer of history at the first Parliament site. And as we advance our work, from this perspective, hoping it's a little bit until the ground freezes this fall. So as far as we can get this fall, and then picking up again in the spring, seeing what we uncover as we advance our investigations and as we begin to assess other portions of the site. Once, as Richard mentioned, some of those surface buildings are removed. So very much looking forward to getting into the kind of pre-industrial era on the site as well. But the timbers in particular were we believe part of the railway infrastructure supporting the industry on the site. So back to you, Sivahami.
Thank you. So next up we have Amr. Amr, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, thank you. So 10,000 plus petitioners are justified in claiming that Thorncliffe Park was arbitrarily selected as location for the train yard without a fulsome and thorough site selection process. To further support this. A few weeks ago at their AGM, Kathleen Wynne and the Leaside Business Park Association both took credit and celebrated moving the train yard out of Leaside. With this in the background, Metrolinx used your back office staff cobbled together a poorly designed desktop analysis of an alternative sites, many of which did not fit your own site criteria. You then trotted out the shame of a process to critical potential obstacles such as the local mosque, a few non-for-profit organizations, other tenants with the cash and false promises in an attempt to fast track and remove obstacles from what is an inherently an arbitrary plan. My question is, why do you continue to take advantage of marginalized communities and show preference to non-minorities and affluent neighborhoods when marginalized communities need the uplifting benefits that come about from transit-oriented development opportunities?
Hi, Amir. It's Malcolm. Thank you for your question. We've spoken many times about this. The site selection process that we did was end-to-end on the Ontario line. We went from exhibition all the way through to the Science Centre, and we had a number of criteria, about 10 criteria that we were measuring all the sites against. And some of them failed on the account of not being large enough. Some of them failed on the fact that they were too far from the main line. And eventually we came down to a short list of 3 sites, and then we evaluated those 3 sites against each other. And what we ended up arriving at, because of the criteria that we were using, was a hybrid site, which didn't put all of the maintenance and storage facility in Thorncliffe Park. It didn't put it all up in Wicksteed Industrial Area, and it didn't put it all over in Leaside. So what we did was we came up with a solution that we then tested against our ability to relocate businesses, relocate services, be able to maintain services, primarily in the Thorncliffe Park north of Overlea area. And then we looked at what the impacts were up in the Wicksteed Industrial Area, how we were going to work with some of the businesses up there to be able to build the facilities. So it was a very thorough site selection process, and it had no biases to it. It was measured against very strict criteria that were very verifiable, and we worked quite closely with the City of Toronto and the TTC and the development of these solutions so that we could make sure that we had input from them and their concerns. We obviously reached out to the Conservation Authority to be able to understand the impacts associated with natural ecological environment. So it was a very comprehensive piece of work that was undertaken. And now with the decisions that have been made, we are in the throes of making sure that the outcome and the build that's going to happen as a result is the very best that we can do for the community. We talked about the engagement for preserving jobs, and we are attempting to keep every single job that is being impacted by this in the community, every single service in the community. And in fact, as a result of the maintenance and storage facility coming to this community, there are going to be an additional 200 to 300 jobs, which you and I have both spoken about being vital for any community, and especially this community, where jobs can be available. Bringing transit into Thorncliffe Park and the station into Thorncliffe Park links Thorncliffe Park with all over Toronto, areas all over Toronto, and that in and of itself provides employment opportunity. The time that it takes to go from Thorncliffe Park to Queen Station is going to be reduced by 15 minutes in each direction, and a half hour each day is going to be handed back to anybody that works down there. So these are all very positive outcomes. We're going to work with you, we're going to work with the community, and we're going to make sure that what we build is the very best. So we welcome you, we welcome your input, and we're going to continue to work with you going forward. Back to you, Sibahani.
Thanks, Malcolm. Next up, we have John. John, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Thanks for giving me a chance to ask a question. As a resident on Pape Avenue, I have concerns about the boring that goes underneath us. Richard, you've already talked about the 30-meter deep tunnel, but I'm curious to know the specifics of the portal and where that will emerge on Pape, what the angle will be, and where specifically that portal will be located. We have, school, we have a retirement home, and I'm very curious to know where the portal is going to emerge.
So, John, good question. You're talking about the portal down in the south end, the Gerard area, and the plaza that's there is where the portal's going to be built and buried. It is also very likely the site from which tunnel boring machines will be launched. So it'll be a very active construction site. And Richard, perhaps you could just talk about how we're going to execute that launch of the tunnel boring machines and maybe the timing associated with the build of the portal.
Sure, Malcolm. So yes, if we're talking about the portal at the south end of the tunnel, that is right at Gerard, where it comes when it hits the railway corridor to the south, and where the existing plaza is there, the grocery store and the plaza in that area, and that's where the portal will go. Essentially, the way it works is we excavate what they call the launch shaft, which is essentially a large square rectangular shaft that descends down to the level of the portal. And then we place the tunnel boring machine in that portal. And then in this case, it's a twin, what they call a twin bore. So there's actually two machines that run side by side. And they actually advance upwards. They launch from this location and move up Pape in a staggered formation. And they progress northwards at the rate of about 10 to 15 meters a day, and eventually emerge at Minton Place and the Don Valley Parkway. This location is chosen because of its proximity to major thoroughfares and our ability to access and service the site without moving through local neighborhoods. With that, back to Sivihami.
Thanks, Richard. Next on our list, we have Rutha. Rutha, go ahead.
Hi. I'm unclear about what happens after you start boring in the St. Lawrence, or the old Parliament site. The route from there is not really indicated. Are you going down Parliament Street? Are you going under the buildings that exist? Can you explain that, or have you decided? Could you hear me?
I can start that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes, perfectly. Good question. So the alignment is really on the east side of Berkeley. So what we're going to be doing is as Richard described the excavation at Gerard, what we're going to be doing is building a portal, which is a large hole in the ground, where we're going to launch the tunnel boring machines. And that portal is a rectangular hole that's going to be running north-south, essentially along the edge of Berkeley Street. So from Berkeley, it would then go north, straight north, up and then curve to the north side of Moss Park. Going to the south, we're going to curve under the existing Parliament Square Park and turn over towards the Distillery District and then come up into the Don Yard. So all of that work is going to be commencing in 2024. So I'm hoping that describes the alignment. I think if you go to our websites, you'll see there that there are alignments available. But if you have any other questions, please give us a call. We're happy to walk you through any of it, and we will share our contact information right at the end with our last slide.
We're coming up to about 5 minutes to the hour, which is when we were planning to begin to wind down, but there's still people who are in the Zoom room and would like to ask a question. So I think Siva and Daryl, if we could fit in another 2 or 3 questions, I guess if you've already asked a question, hopefully we can go to people who have not yet had a chance to ask their first question. And if you can be brief, we can go a few minutes over time in order to give more people a chance to ask questions.
Thanks, Joseph.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
Thanks, Joseph. Next, we have Lucas. Lucas, go ahead.
Hello, I realized that we're at the beginning of doing the construction of the Ontario line, but I was wondering if there's plans in the future, once the Ontario line current length is done, as if it's going to be any future extensions to it, because with the anticipated, I guess, growth of Toronto and more density around different parts, I would only hope that they would, because this is a big central line, and it would be really good to have if possible, the extending to other north and east or to the west on the sides. So if I can get your opinion for that, please.
Yeah, no, that's a super question, and it's actually something that was fundamental to some of the decision-making processes that we made when we got to our terminal stations. So we got up to Ontario Place, and that's at the exhibition site, and we realized that further extension west and a potential to link back up with Line 2 was an ambition that might happen in the future. So we've made sure that we've built our infrastructure at Exhibition Station to be able to extend further west. And whether we go back up Dufferin or whether we go up a little bit further west, those are available to us. And then on the north, where we're at Science Center Station, we actually went across Eglinton Avenue in order to make sure that any future extension doesn't have to deal with the crossing of Eglinton Avenue as their first challenge. So we moved across to the northeast corner, and from there we can get a good expansion further north, and maybe eventually up to Shepherd Avenue, because if you interface with the Shepherd subway, you will also then provide more relief to Line 1, which is always an ambition for that very congested subway. So without a doubt, the concept of expansion is built into the project exactly as we're planning going forward. Back to you, Daryl and Sivahami.
Sorry about that. I think that we were both waiting for the other. We've got 2 people left. So Paul, you can go ahead now. Paul, go ahead.
Quick question about the vehicles that were expected to be used on the line. I'm just wondering what can be expected, as far as I know they're not using the subways that are used on line 1 and 2, as well as just when they're expecting bidding to start for the design of the line / when the contractor is expected to be chosen for whoever's building the line.
Sure, Paul, another good question. So the vehicles that we're using are subway technology vehicles. They're what they're called is Grade of Automation 4, GOA 4, and those are completely automated trains. They're driverless trains, and it takes away all the user error that might occur as a result of starting and stopping. They have regenerative braking so that electricity gets generated during the braking process and goes back into the line to run other trains that are speeding up. And then the very last little bit is used with conventional friction braking. So the subway cars are right now being designed and priced as we speak. There is a worldwide competition for providing the vehicles to the Ontario line, and we're expecting that company to be selected next year. And that's a really exciting time, because the subway vehicles are key to the operations, and the contract that is going to provide the vehicles is also going to operate the vehicles and operate the line. So it's a 30-year concession that we're going to be working with this project company. And it's they're going to be also doing the maintenance of the vehicles and the maintenance of the line. So it's a really big contract, and it's a really exciting time in the procurement of the Ontario line. We also broke up the heavy civils work, the tunnels work, and the stations work into two contracts. We have the South Civils Stations and Tunnels contract, which really runs from the Don Yard out to the exhibition. That too is currently out for tender, and both of those packages have been out for just about a year now, just coming up to a year. It takes a long time to price and put together a good proposal for these contracts because they're multi-billion-dollar contracts. And then the other big contract that we're putting out is the Girard to Science Center station contract, which we're calling the North Civils Stations contract. And that one is going to come out immediately following the closing and award of the South Civils contract. And that too is something that we're working on and putting together so that we can get that price closed in about a year again in order to get them building. And then the three contracts are going to run through for about 9+ years to create the opening of the Ontario line. And like we said, it's an exciting time for transit with the 4 big projects: the Scarborough Subway, the Eglinton Crosstown, the Yonge North Extension, and the Ontario line, all coming about at the same time. It's truly, truly exciting. Anyways, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Joseph.
And I think we have one more question that Siva has teed up, and then that will be the end of the Q&A. Siva?
That's right. Thanks, Joseph. And we know that we had a couple more people who had questions, and we really encourage everybody who has further questions from after this presentation to either email us at ontarioline@metrolinx.com, or on the event page. If you're on the page, you can see that there is a button that says book a meeting, and you can book a phone call or video meeting one-on-one with our community relations team, and we'd be really happy to walk you through any further subjects. So Diane, you have the last word. Go ahead.
Hi. Throughout your presentation, I noticed you're talking about the Ontario line and the GO trains, but I'm wondering about the Via Rail, because from what I understand from Via Rail, they're also working on a project called the high frequency trains that connects Toronto to Quebec City. So I'm just wondering where that's gonna go in all this, and also like the freight trains.
Hi, Dan. Good question. They're all good questions tonight. So we certainly have been in touch with our counterparts at VIA, and obviously the freight train movements through here, we already deal with that. So we are very well coordinated and collaborative with those other agencies, and make sure that our obligations and their obligations are fulfilled. They know the infrastructure that we're building, and so without a doubt, I can tell you that there's been an extensive amount of coordination and collaboration with all those agencies, so that all of our ambitions, transit ambitions, economic ambitions on the part of the heavy rail operators can all be realized within the work that we're doing. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, everyone. I think that we've covered a lot of ground tonight. I hope that everyone who's participated has found the information useful. Now, this is not the end. Of course, Metrolinx is not going away. This is a long-term project, and you've heard tonight, Malcolm referred to several opportunities to provide input that exist right now. If you just go to the top of the screen above the video, you'll see a Get Engaged menu, and there you'll see a What's New box that talks about the first Parliament site, heritage interpretation and plan survey. You'll see that in the sidebar on the right. You'll see a link to the East Segment sound demonstration. You can review the latest environmental assessment. If you click on book a meeting, as Siva said, you can actually book a time with Metrolinx staff, and there is the contact us, and you can contact people directly. Always, Metrolinx is available at ontarioline@metrolinx.com. So, and finally, if you didn't have a chance to ask your question, Metrolinx reviews all of the questions that are on the written site and responds to the major concerns and responds here. So it's not too late for you to ask your question in writing, and you'll be able to come back and see that it's there. So again, we're hoping that there is a sense of ongoing connectedness to the community. Thank you very much for participating tonight. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the participants. Please stay safe, stay home, and be good.